So I'm just going to talk about what we do in Madison. I'm actually an elections administrator. Wisconsin is kind of a weird state. It's one of only a handful of states where elections are administered at the local level. You know, most of you are in a place where your county clerk or you've got a county board of elections that's running your elections. So there's estimated roughly 10,000 election administrators in the United States. And to put things into perspective, Wisconsin has 1,900 of those 10,000. So we do a lot of, on the city level, a lot of the actual work of administering elections. And we've got about 250,000 residents and about 145,000 actual registered voters in the city of Madison. So I'm just going to talk about what we do as far as like voter education and outreach, voter registration. I'm going to talk a little bit about early voting. I know it's not going to be applicable to a lot of you, but I do know there are some other Massachusetts folks who do things at the local level here, but to also put into perspective what early voting can do for an election. So in the city of Madison, we have a program that we call the Voter Education Ambassadors, and this was done in response to the passage in 2011 of a strict voter ID law at the state level. Our voter education ambassadors are community volunteers. They aren't paid, but they are volunteers, a lot of times that are affiliated with other local civic organizations. We get a lot of League of Women Voters ambassadors, the NAACP has a lot of ambassadors, but they don't have to be. They could really be anybody. And the idea is that these are going to be people who are going to be educated by our office. They go through specialized training from our office, and they're going to be able to answer questions in the community about all sorts of aspects of the voting process. A lot of it is voter ID, like I said, because it was done in response to a strict voter ID law in the state of Wisconsin. But it's also voter registration. It's also how do I get an absentee ballot. It's information about the election process in general. So in 2016 and 2017, our office was able to train over 500 of our voter education ambassadors. And we provide all the materials to the ambassadors as well. So ambassadors aren't responsible for trying to produce any of their own materials. They can come to us and we will provide any materials that they want. A lot of the organizations do their own materials, but they'll do that in conjunction with our office as well so that we can ensure that the information that's being disseminated is accurate information as well. We also hold mock elections. And then when I say mock election, I mean really we roll out the tabulators that are used on election day to wherever we're going to be going. We've got sort of fake ballots, mock ballots. We usually hold these at sort of community events, but ones that are specifically focused on families and kids, with the idea that we're going to try to reach the adults through the parents. So the ones that are usually participating in the elections a lot of times are the kids, because we have ballots. They're like superhero ballots. Who's your favorite superhero? Who's your favorite superhero team? Whatever it is that kids are really interested in. But then at the same time, because they're dragging their parents along with them, we're able to talk to the parents, make sure that parents are registered, make sure that their parents have the proper photo ID, that everybody knows what's going on in the voting process. So voter registration, like I said, in the city of Madison, voter registration is all done at the local level. Anyway, we are the ones that have to process all those voter registrations, but there are still things that the city does outside of our office that could be replicable in your own communities. So we do offer agency voter registration. All city agencies and all city employees who interact with the public are trained on how to register voters. They have to offer voter registration to anybody who presents what we call a proof of residence document, so something that would be eligible for them to register to vote. They would then have to be offered the opportunity to register to vote. We also really encourage agencies to identify other situations where voter registration information would be beneficial. So things like when somebody calls the streets department and asks, what day does my trash get picked up? So, the people who don't know what day their trash is getting picked up are the people who just moved there. And when you just moved there in the state of Wisconsin, you have to re-register every time you moved. So that's somebody that we need to encourage to also register to vote, because we know that likely that they've just moved there. Things also like, I need to switch my water, bill. Or like I moved, I need to transfer my water billing to this address. Obviously they've just moved. Now they're going to need to re-register to vote as well at that new address. So making sure that when they're getting that information from our water department, but then they're also getting that information on how to register to vote because we know they're going to need to. The idea of meeting people where they are. I think there's many, many opportunities in your cities where you can facilitate that voter registration process and that the voter then doesn't have to go out and it's not a totally separate process. It's just part of what they're already doing at your local level. So like I said, I'll talk about early voting just a little bit, but just to kind of, it'll give you some idea about sort of the process that can happen. So prior to November 2016, early voting in the state of Wisconsin was limited to a 10-day period, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. That was our early voting opportunities. And you were only allowed to have voting in one location per municipality. So that was whether you had 200 residents or whether you were the city of Milwaukee and had 500,000 residents. You guys have one early voting location per municipality. So that's just a portion of the line that we had in, I want to maybe say April, our presidential primary election of 2016. That line then snaked around that wall there, went down another hallway that was about, 100 feet, and then came back down that hallway as well. People were waiting in line 2 to 3 hours, potentially. And we would process over 100 or over 1,000 early voters in our office per day. And let me tell you, our office is not set up to process 1,000 people in a day. So then in the November 2016 presidential election, what happened in between April of 2016 and November 2016 was that there was a court decision that challenged those early voting limitations, and that was ruled successfully challenged those early voting limitations, got rid of the 10-day limitation, got rid of the hour limitation, also got rid of the restriction on only having it in one place per municipality. So in response, the city of Madison went from 1 early voting location to 14 early voting locations. We went from 10 days of early voting to 6 weeks of early voting. And there was also early voting on every day of the week. No matter what day, Sunday, Saturday, there would be at least one, typically multiple, early voting locations that you would be able to vote at. So all of our public libraries were early voting locations. The city of Madison has one central library and then has 10 branch libraries throughout the city. So we had early voting at every single one of those libraries. We also had 3 locations on the college campuses. Now the college campuses didn't have them for all 6 weeks. We opened those ones up closer to the election, but we had 2 locations on the University of Wisconsin campus, and we had 1 location on the Edgewood College campus, which is a smaller liberal arts school in Madison. So what that did, so November 2008 there were 17,000 early votes, 2010 5,000, November 2012 18, November 2014 just not quite 9, but in November 2016 we had 57,000 early votes in the city of Madison. Now there's a debate on whether or not early voting actually increases participation. Some people will say yes, some people will say no. But anecdotally what we witnessed in the city of Madison, so in the state of Wisconsin, the participation in November 2016 went down as compared to November 2012. In the city of Milwaukee, it went down drastically. It didn't in the city of Madison. It stayed pretty flat from November 2012 to November 2016. Now obviously that's not proof that early voting was the reason, but we didn't see the same reductions in participation that a lot of other places in the state of Wisconsin saw. Keep going through that, I guess. All right, so just takeaways. Get creatives. There's a lot of ways that you can reach people that you would have never thought, voter registration is gonna, seems to coincide. Even though you don't run elections at your city levels in a lot of places, that doesn't mean that you can't take ownership of that process. Build on your existing processes and your resources that you have. A lot of these things that we do in the city of Madison, it's not like we are creating whole new programs a lot of times. It's, here's what we're doing now, let's just add this little thing to it. But what you have to do is you have to get your city agencies and your city employees to recognize that voting and voter registration is part of their job. That they're not just the streets employees, they're just not the parks employees, that voting and voter registration is part of everybody's job and should be part of everybody's job. So they have to really get some ownership and buy-in, but you as the city leaders, that's where you can say to your employees and that this is what we do. This is part of your job and that you need to make this part of your job.